the thing is, not everybody has to be a leader, right? The thing is, it gets to a point whereby if you feel you're a leader and you have a political party and you want to lead and they're calling for elections, come, sell yourself, and we will decide if we want you. But know that if we choose you, we are going to hold you accountable at certain standards. So we are not going to vote for you like it was back in the day.
Is that I think these kids have been looking at all the mistakes that have been made in the past, and they don't want to repeat them. The other interesting thing about these kids is that no one has said, like, I'm looking for a political position, because for previous generations, that's what people have been looking for, and that's why it's been easy to lure people with goodies, that we're going to give you this office, we're going to nominate you, we're going to do this. Thank you for calling the
habari zenu.
Mzuri sana. Please tell us. Tell us your name and where you're calling from, and then give us your comment.
Hey, no worries. Prof Monda here. Thanks, guys, for the show. I always follow. Really appreciate you, your hard work every week. A couple of comments, right? I think, firstly, I've really been struggling with the whole Gen Z movement, because it's youthful, it's very visionary, it's very passionate, but sometimes youthful passion without vision can be very problematic, because you want absolute solutions which are sometimes not practical. So where am I going with this? What do you guys think? We've talked a lot. I've really been following your excellent conversation. But the question is, what do we do after this, right? What's the agenda? What's the 1, 2, 3 steps to actually see meaningful change on the ground? And my challenge, if you look at many of these social movements across the world, right? Take, for example, the Arab Spring. It started with the same zeal and fervor, but the Middle East is pretty much where it was pre-2013, when the trader in Tunisia emulated, right? He burnt himself, right? And he had all those problems. So where am I going with this? What I'm saying is, there really needs to be a vision of what Gen Z want at the end of the day, and it cannot just be about people who are below 25, because everyone is really a Gen Z. This is not something that started in 2024. This stuff started with J.M. Kariuki. This stuff started with the Mau Mau. That spirit of Gen Z is beyond 2024. So I'm thinking, at the grassroots, the way they've been so ruthlessly efficient in disrupting government and holding government to account with the demonstrations. In every town, at every moment, occupy, occupy, occupy. There should be a way this social youth movement can organize at the grassroots to place independent candidates. If they want to form a party, that's fine. If they still want to be a leaderless movement, that's fine. All these individuals will be identified, vetted through the movement, and will challenge each one of these politicians all the way up to the presidency. And they will sweep them out of office very, very easily, because they're the majority, and they're organized, and they're committed. In the interim, between now and 2027, they should really be adding, this movement should really be snowballing, holding bigger questions of similar to what you guys are doing with the IMF demonstrations in Washington. Nobody's really talking about this, about the debt that Kenya is taking up. Most of our debt is actually not to the U.S., it's to China. $80 billion in debt. So this is a big problem. And if Ruto's trying to diversify the portfolio, which means remove more expensive Chinese debt and replace it with cheaper IMF debt. But the problem is that's not really solving the issue. The underlying issue is poor, bad governance. You can tax people as much as you want, but as long as that money is not being used efficiently, it's being stolen, this is not helpful. So broader conversations really need to be made about structural problems with these multilateral bodies like IMF, because they are part of the problem also. They know they are lending to corrupt governments. They know that money is not leaving the U.S. It's buying apartments in D.C., buying apartments in New York, buying apartments in London, and buying apartments in Beijing. I think that's a bigger question these youthful people really need to think about. Everybody needs to think about. I think the broader question is also, gentlemen, we need to hold these criminals to account. How is it in Kenya in 2024? Kenyans, not even just very visible. If a very highly visible reporter can be bundled in to a car and treated like rubbish, what about somebody who's not known, an 18 or 19-year-old kid? Where are we going with this? This impunity has to stop. And it not only has to stop, people need to be held to account. And this brings me to my third point. Raila Odinga, whether you support him or not, has really proved to be part of the problem. Every time there's a critical juncture for Kenya to change, Raila cuts a deal. Ruto was about to fall. Ruto desperately needed someone to bail him out. And he was looking to find a way to get either Kalonzo to come and do a deal with him or Raila to do a deal with him. If they had both refused and continued to put the pressure, Ruto would have been stuck. The donors would have refused to lend him the money. He would have had to break parliament and call for free and fair elections. But these politicians, part of the problem of why we can't get the change is the opposition is no different from the government, because they're the guys getting the $8,000 a month salary and sitting allowances and the SUVs. So they can cry and pretend, cry these crocodile tears. But believe me, Raila and Ruto are two sides of the same coin. They're all deal makers. And ultimately you will find this is a question about class and class interest. So Ruto is now in power as an elite, and elite interests are being threatened. So Ruto will call another elite, either Kalonzo or Raila. Raila was first to run and pick the bait and say, we need to settle the ship. So Raila will cut a deal with Ruto, just like he did with the handshake, which no other Kenyan participated in. We don't know what they decided with Uhuru. Just like he did with Kibaki, we don't know what they decided in 2007. Raila did the same thing with Daniel Arap Moi with NDP in 97. We don't know what they decided. And these backroom deals are what is really holding our country back. Because anytime there's a critical juncture where we're going to clean out the old guard and really bring in new ideas and people who actually want to serve public good, that baby is always miscarried. Is always miscarried because of these older generation politicians. And Raila has really, really, really dropped the ball. It's really sad that all these young people over the years who've been demonstrating for whatever social movements Raila has pushed, that this is the way he treats them. Their blood is on his hands, and he goes to shake the hand of the person who's killing and abducting them. So my broader point is, in conclusion here, unless we have systemic change, the Gen Zs really need to organize themselves at the grassroots with a view for 2027. But in the interim, every social issue that comes up, whether it's about this new bill, whether it's about now putting pressure on the next half of the cabinet, which will be reappointed, which I think you'll realize was really a deal between Ruto and Raila. So Ruto has returned his half of the team, which is essentially the team that was there before, And now the other half is given it to Raila, so Raila can nominate people from his side. I mean, it's a game that the elite and landed aristocracy, whether it's the Kenyatta aristocracy, the Ruto aristocracy, or the Odinga aristocracy, they're playing on Kenyans. And I think Kenyans really need to see beyond that. Put pressure on him in terms of his cabinet. Every public policy issue, we need to know. All these cases around graft, the billions that have been stolen, all these cases around the Auditor General, money missing at the county, money missing from the Nairobi government, money missing from the national government. Why are all these cases never pursued? Our own DP, Gachagua, he had a 400 million shilling case. When they came into power, suddenly that case disappeared, was withdrawn. So it's really, I think you can see where I'm going here.
Okay,
it's
Professor
really
Monda.
a systemic problem. It's really a systemic problem whereby the system doesn't function because you have such entrenched interests on the opposition and the government that don't want things to change.
Okay. Asante sana, Professor Monda. Thank you so much. Are you going to be coming to the protests tomorrow in Washington, D.C.? Or how close are you to us?
I'm in New York, so I had a previous engagement already arranged, but I was, we're having some the organizing. I've been involved with the ones in New York.
Okay, sawa. We need to connect with the New York team so that we can have a moment when DMV people come to New York and when New York people come to the DMV, because we're only 5 hours from each other. So asante sana, Professor Monda, as always, very interesting points.
Right, and then the other issue also we should think about is what can we do as diasporans, right? Because imagine the capital, when you think of like, when Kenyans go to support the rugby, right, the Shujaa,
yes.
That volume and capacity.
Yes.
If Kenyans in diaspora also organize themselves, and because we can do a lot, we can call our senators, we can call a lot of us as citizens, we can call our members of parliament, we can target the key members on these congressional committees, we can fundraise for, to support some of these, like that reporter, like you guys were saying. How do you just target? And she was warned. You just target the police and they just shoot her for doing her job. It's so inhuman. And then the wider other issues, Kaka Mwenyekiti, all these bodies that turn up in Shokohola, these bodies turning up in Kware, it really seems to me that there's a cartel engaged in body harvesting. There might be cults, but I really think it's more about harvesting of human organs. And this is really the ruthlessness, the mafia state that we live in Kenya. And this is worrying because, a lot of people want to retire in Kenya. So do you want to go to Kenya and be literally in a failing state? So I really think also as diaspora, when I come to DC, we should chat. We really need to organize people around here. Really.
Professor Monda, we're going to connect.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
yes, Professor Monda, I'm saying we're going to connect. And people here, I see Tabitha Njeri saying this caller is brilliant points, logically laid out, well articulated. And Slay is agreeing with Tabitha Njeri. And a point also being made by Awar is she's saying, I wish folks would log into X and listen to all the discussions the young people have been having for years. Don't sleep on X space. These people have a vision. And that's what I was going to tell you, Professor Monda, because for me personally and most of us here on the panel, we've been so engrossed with what's been happening, especially on X spaces, because these conversations are happening 24 hours a day. People are talking about minerals. people are talking about sanitary towels. People are talking about these laws that are the bills that are currently pending in parliament. So there's very, very deep discussions. There's experts who are coming in, and there's people who are looking at, like some of the loopholes that are in some of these laws that these leaders are using. So it's a very confusing moment because it's a turning point. But I think, in my view, this is one of the most clear groups that I've seen with a vision, because unlike the other groups you mentioned, Professor Monda, like in Tunisia, in Egypt, in all these other countries, unlike all, the unique thing about the Kenyan situation is that all these young kids are being led by the constitution.
Yeah, and then
that is a common common focus that they have. All these other countries, they did not have a document or anything that brought a unity of purpose. And then so that's one very unique thing.
Are you disappointed with Raila? I know you've known him for many years.
Yes.
Are you disappointed that he's gone for a handshake and
Deeply.
he's really part of the problem?
I am deeply disappointed. And I don't think, in as much as I've supported Raila for so many years, I don't think he's going to recover from this. So, and that's the reason why we're discussing previously. Maybe he looks at this like his last stand. Let me just benefit, like the people who are around me who had promised them this and that. But this is very deeply disappointing. I don't see, he's always been able to get himself out of those handshakes and deals that he's had before. This one, I think there's no returning from this. I'm sorry to say, Mika.
Ali, another thing I wanted to tell Professor here is that you ask what is the vision that these kids have. They've clearly said what they want. Number one, they've said they want IABC to be reconstituted.
Yeah.
They want continuous registration. They don't want breaks in continuous registration. They want release of ID cards. They want to be able to get their ID cards.
Recall of MPs.
They want they want to be able to recall MPs. They want an audit of all the debt that is in the country. They want the debt to be laid open, how much is paid, what is paid, where the money is going. They want a lifestyle audit on the members of parliament and the money that has been stolen, to go after that money so that money can come back and pay the debt that is there. They've said that they want more opportunities for youth. They don't want to be told they have to go to another country to go work. They don't want, they've gone to school. They want to stay in their country and help their country grow. They want opportunities to be there to work.
Right. So isn't that also essentially the problem, that both the opposition and the government, they don't want the IEBC to function well, because they'll be out of office, they'll be recalled, and that is their playing. Constantly they want to make sure they undermine IEBC, so that it's always a crisis. We are rushing to get IEBC 2 months before the election, otherwise it will become another Rwanda. It's a very cynical, systemic ploy by, again, the elites in both the government and the opposition.
Yeah, and so that is why I felt that when you say that you feel like they look rudderless, or there's no
clarity
of vision. No, there is clarity
it's actually
of vision.
Very clear.
There is a clarity of vision
do you think they should
of what they want.
They should have a leader?
No,
absolutely
no, because there is the problem that has the thing that has brought us here is leaders. As the leaders who go, you yourself said there was a handshake that was made that nobody else was privy of what was made in that handshake.
But Professor Monda, I think this is something that we are learning. I'm sure you're also learning with what's happening right now, is that I think these kids have been looking at all the mistakes that have been made in the past, and they don't want to repeat them. The other interesting thing about these kids is that no one has said, I'm looking for a political position, because for previous generations, that's what people have been looking for, and that's why it's been easy to lure people with goodies, that we're going to give you this office, we're going to nominate you, we're going to do this. So these kids are just asking for accountability, and they just want a chance to have a shot at having, a decent life. They're not even asking for anything lavish. They're
Right.
asking for a shot at a decent life. Of all the movements that I've seen from before that I read about and that have been there through my lifetime, I have never seen so much clarity of thought like this one. And they're so consistent when
demand,
you listen
yeah.
to them across different platforms, be it mainstream media or be it in X spaces. They're all speaking the same language, they're all saying the same thing. And this right here, Professor Monda, might be our delivery from evil. So that's why we, and they've achieved
Alright,
so much.
I agree with your ideals. My challenge is 54 million Kenyans cannot make decisions for every little thing. That's why we have representatives, right? That's why we have a parliament, right? I mean, it's not practical to have a mass movement that's constantly leaderless. I mean, there has to be some kind of structure.
So at the moment,
who do you negotiate with?
At the moment, Professor Monda.
My point here is,
Yeah.
just real quick. My point here is, gentlemen, politics is about compromise, right? It's like making mutura. You know, you're not baking cookies. It's a messy, smelly job. It's about compromise, right? And I fear if the Gen Zs continue with, yes, their demonstrations are good. Yes, ideals are good. We want it to be as white as pure snow. But I fear in the event that you don't have a structure, even foreign players, the Brits and the US and the Chinese, they're all looking and they're getting nervous because they support you philosophically, but they're also scared if they're not sure about what's going to come after.
So that's
So I don't know. I'm just throwing that as
the thing is this. So Professor Monda, this is if you listen to the conversation earlier, what we said is this. The thing is, not everybody has to be a leader, right? The thing is, it gets to a point whereby if you feel you're a leader and you have a political party and you want to lead and they're calling for elections, come, sell yourself and we will decide if we want you. But know that if we choose you, we are going to hold you accountable at certain standards. So we are not going to vote for you like it was back in the day in terms of popularity or you're buying votes or what you're doing. It's you just know that whatever has caused this election can cause another election. So it comes to a time whereby when people make demands, they don't make demands in terms of they want to be the ones who take that mantle. It's demands that come that they want the people who have the responsibility of that mantle to work along a certain guideline. So telling the Gen Zs that they have to form a political party and it has to be a political party of Gen Zs is basically telling them.
No, I'm actually just suggesting that because I know you can start with an absolute, very radical position and say Ruto must go, but then you also have to then come up with a counter offer to say, and these are our compromises.
And the compromises
that's
are
the way
there.
Politics work.
And that's what we've told you. And that's what
That's the way politics work.
So
You
Professor
can't get
Monda,
everything you want.
so Professor Monda, you know, like before we let you go, the one thing that I will, I will quickly let you know, like with our own, because we're all learning in this process. It's not that the Gen Zs have asked for anarchy. And when we look at Parliament, for example, as currently constituted, I think all Kenyans can agree right now that Parliament is a compromised body. So as it's structured right now, it's not a representation of what the people want. And this is the fresh start.
It's a rubber stamp.
Yes, and this is the fresh start. This is the fresh start that we're having right now, and it's going step by step. You know, like with immediacy, they've already listed, you know, like things that they want within the following weeks. The problem of this dialogue, these academic dialogues, is what has got us to where we are here. So that's the reason why they're saying this, whatever we want, we are not coming up with this stuff. It is what this document that's running Kenya, the Kenyan Constitution, it's what he's saying. This is exactly what we want. So it's kind of like telling a mailman, okay, you've not been delivering mail for the last 3 weeks, please start delivering mail. That does not require compromise. That does not require negotiation.
Okay.
That does not require coming
Alright.
down. So it's very
simply-
basic things that are being asked for. It's kind of like we are in an Uber environment, and most of the older generation are still stuck to the taxi driver who knows the streets, will tell you the history of this building, will tell you, oh, so and so stayed over here and knows this and that. But then there's this young, efficient Uber driver who will get you to a destination faster, may not know the names of the buildings. So that's the situation that we are facing right now. So are we gonna still
Noted.
stick to the taxi model, or are we gonna jump into an Uber to get to our destination faster? Real quick, 1 minute, Professor Monda, before we let you go.
Hey, cheers. No. And actually, this is a question that political scientists are studying a lot around social movements. You know, whether it's like we're saying, Tunisia, Egypt. Remember, they had one in Thailand. Remember, they had one in where was it, in Sri Lanka? Whether people overthrew the prime minister and they were swimming in his swimming pool in parliament. So
Yes.
people are really struggling. A lot of theorists are really struggling around this question.
Okay.
But I think ultimately, Ndugu Badawi, you need to tell your elites in the ODM, they need to allow the country to go. They need to allow new leadership. You can't just keep hijacking parties, making parties, and being an elite and trying to control everything. They need to allow fresh spirit of ideas.
Professor
Whether
Monda.
old or young.
Yes,
Let's
Professor
move on.
Monda, these
and you know
parties-
what I love with Kenya is we are such a model for the region. This would never happen in Rwanda or Tanzania or Uganda. So it's shaking the whole continent.
Okay. Aya, asante
Thank you,
sana,
thank you.
Professor Monda. Thank you so much.
What I wanted to say was this.
Go ahead,
I think
Uno.
there's so much. You provided a very good analogy, because at some point Nokia was the thing,
Yeah.
but they were caught sleeping and they were taken over. And
Yeah.
they had to adjust accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when they adjusted, they didn't adjust.
They didn't.
Wakafanya nini? Wakawachwa. I'm with Miko on this one. Who is saying that? Fine, you may have leaders, or you have people who may point. Does not necessarily make them leaders. They may be like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna kutana here, whatever. Does not make them those are the guys you can go to, and they're the ones who are really directing traffic per se.
Yeah.
But it's not and I think that is the notion. Like okay, you have to have a leader. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You know, and this organization, this Gen Z movement, it's not. It's I would call it. I know it's called leaderless, but I would call it leaderful. You know, for every little, like X space they have, there's someone who's hosting. For every tasks they have, where you need, like someone to lead you through this task, they have people. They have people who are organizing fundraisers. They have fundraisers for people who are hurt or people who've been killed in the process. They have people who are organizing legal help. They have leadership in that aspect. They have people who are doing so many different things here and there, and it's working like a very well-oiled machine. I think the problem that the older generation is experiencing, it's an Uber. Uko na mtu wako wa taxi. Uko na mtu wako wa taxi. He knows the city. He knows everywhere. Like he knows even who's cheating on who, based on the customers that is picking up and dropping off and what time. But then now there's this new young Uber driver who unfortunately fortunately can get you to a destination faster at a much cheaper rate.
An affordable rate.
An affordable rate, a more comfortable car. So I think that's just a difficulty. Number of comments here were coming. Washeke says the young people have a vision and they're using the Constitution as a guide and reference. They are very focused and are armed with facts.
Goes to
Very
what you
true.
said, yeah.
Our report says,
Joanna, what report?
yeah, in the diaspora, we have put out calls to action to each legislators. A civic engaged Kenya diaspora is a must. Tomorrow is the opportune time for the Kenyan diaspora to show up. Let me pause, cause as easy as people gather for day parties, DJ curated events, concerts, rugby, woy. And then Gerald Oliech says, I feel sorry for any Kenyan who still supported Raila, especially after handshake. Guys, we learned history in KCSE. History never repeats itself, people do. And Washeke says the professor needs to tune in to one of the X spaces and his questions will be answered. Awar says that's why other generations are struggling with a leaderless approach and want to devalue this. I'm catching fatigue. The Gen Z want leaders who have integrity. Gerald Oliech says, Professor, please, politics is our problem. When will we understand this? We need to run in and with policy. Politics should be the last sideshow. Washeke says, why is the older generation fixated on the movement having a leader? Awar, because they cannot see the vision. They love the status quo. Kenyan Jui, the villagers have come out to stone the snake, and the snake now demands to know, who is your leader? The villagers respond and say, we are leaderless, but we all agree that we want you gone and dead. Very good from Kenyan Jui Apo. Gerald says, now that his policy well and articulated and profoundly explained, let the mailman deliver the mail. And then Eva says, Kenyans have compromised, trusted, and accepted nonsense for too long. Kenyans are tired. Drastic change all around is required now and also at the polls. Yes.
The harsh one.
And then Washeke says they even have people organizing food for those in hospitals. Awara Sema Amkeni Kumekucha, get with the program, adjust and open your mind. Eda Eva says the push to identify leaders within the Gen Z by the government seems like a move to be able to manipulate and instill fear to hash out and stop the protest so they can get back to feeding
100%
themselves. And then again, I want to remind the listeners that you are tuned in to the One Mic Show, and I'm your co-host and producer Ali Badawi. We're of course talking to Professor Monda earlier. We're talking about Azimio leaders Raila Odinga's move to sanitize Ruto in exchange for cabinet positions for his coalition. I have the regular panel with me, Mr. One Mic sports anchor Mika Och and resident DJ Omosh Fire. Time is really running out, but we're shortly going to be talking about the damage in President Ruto's carefully crafted international reputation. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be talking about that as we try to wrap up. Our lines are open, 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. Feel free to call in. Of course, remember, protests tomorrow at IMF HQ2 at 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's going to be Saturday, July the 20th, tomorrow, 12:30 to 3:30. I checked the weather. The weather is going to be awesome. It's not going to be as hot as it has been the previous weeks. It's going to be in the 70s. I'm part of the organizing team. I can see Awar here. Awar has also been working so hard, diligently. I'm even surprised she has time to, come and tune into the One Mic Show because she's been working diligently to prepare for the protest tomorrow. The protest basically is going to be a demand that the IMF bear responsibility for the 50+ deaths following the demos to reject the IMF-inspired Kenyan Finance Bill of 2024. Of course, Washeke had already declared before that anyone in this panel who does not show up will be fined. Washeke will be telling us that fine, and I will be collecting it. So, and those are just the rules. So you have a choice.
Kwani si democracy.
Yeah, you have a choice. No. There's no democracy. There's no. It's leaderless.
But then why are you collecting?
It's leaderless. It's a task. That's a task.
That's a leader.
That's a task.
That's leading.
No, it's a task.
You're leading the polls.
We are leaderful.
How is he a bazaar who doesn't have portfolio?
Exactly.
Bazaar being a portfolio.
So just know you're gonna get fined if you don't show up for this protest. So anyone who's within 5 hours of the DMV, please drive down to the IMF. We're going to be singing. We're going to be having a good time, 12:30 to 3:30. And this is how we will start mobilizing. Because even in the diaspora, we have to organize ourselves. Because if we don't organize ourselves, tutapangwa na wengine. So yeah. So now, here's the deal. Let me read a couple of more comments here before I forget them. I can see Kenyan Jew is saying, nice show, guys. And then Steve Batty says, good luck tomorrow, everyone. And then Awar says, I have a ride. I am coming with Omosh. So Omosh has already been designated as an attendee and as a driver. So you have no choice. And organizers are arriving there early. So you better wake up. You better wake up.
Wewe na amuta niwekea hizi pressures.
You better wake up early enough.
Plus sheke, sijui I am a democracy of me.
You better wake up early enough. You know, you will finance those Maldives trips.
I'm not boarding.
But now...